Howdy, howdy.
Howdy. All right. So hey, we're as noted in the just in the Discord messages, little shakeup of the calendar this week. And we're kind of blending Plutus PBL with Playground today and tomorrow. Giovanni was going to present on the auth NFT mechanism that I forget which Catalyst round it was, 3 or 4, and he actually built it a while ago. But it's about time that we get this tool into people's hands. And it's also relevant to a lot of what we're talking about today. But it was better for him to meet tomorrow. And I think it'll be really impactful for everybody learning with Plutus PBL to have a chance, like have a front row seat at that lecture and get to hear from Giovanni what he's working on, and then to ask questions about integrating that system. So we flopped, and so today is a PBL live coding session here at Playground, and it's going to be a little bit of both Playground and live coding. So what I'd like to do is provide a bit of background. Different people have different levels of familiarity with what's going on at PBL. So I want to get you caught up and give everybody a frame for this. Some people who are students in Plutus PBL right now might not have heard some of the bigger picture design that the Plutus PBL course is leading towards. So this will be a review of some topics from the spring of this year. And then we have one particular project that we're working on that is perfect for getting together here in this Playground environment and talking about that. That's what we're looking at today. But what we usually start live coding with is just, open Q&A. So Nelson, Yuli, and I already had a chance to dig deep into one of the assignments this week. Anybody else who's participating in PBL have any topical questions about what you're working on right now?
I will not bore you with governance. So, but that's what I've been thinking about.
Steve, your whole life is PBL right now, eh? If you choose to think about it that way.
Thank you. Thank you for seeing the metaphor in it. I hope it pays off somehow.
You have unusual insight, at least, from that adventure. And just once again, I want to shout out you, Lucas. Thank you for really pushing the other avenues that we need to be exploring. It's been that message earlier today about, thinking about these other things that people have to know. It's incredible.
Simple things, just trying to get the guys that are falling behind. But yeah, that person in specific, he's been doing some serious stuff, I think, on other aspects, on other fronts. But yeah, thanks.
Yeah. We want to expose people to these ideas without acknowledging fully that we don't know where it goes next, right? What are people actually going to do once they learn this stuff? That's up to them, right? What are they going to focus on? It might be something that they discover by working through the course and they run with that, but it might be that they stumble into something that we didn't even predict, and that's even better. So just watching these different opportunities pop up has been really nice.
Yeah, I'm waiting for the day when Nelson comes up and says he invented some AI tokenomics driven platform. I don't know.
Yeah, I got to upload the Nelson once again bravely jumped in and led us in a little first GraphQL exploration, and then we dove into an interesting JavaScript task that would probably be a good one for for anybody who needs to really learn more about JavaScript. Scott.
Yeah, can you hear me all right?
Yep, gotcha.
All right. I'm just curious. I know Gimbalabs kind of pushes open source, but is that also kind of pushed in the PBL as well?
In terms of like requiring that what our students end up doing, create open source tooling, we don't take any stance on that. But all of the code we're using in the course is openly available on our GitLab. It is worth to take some time and just make sure that the right licenses are added to each of those repos. Sometimes we just initialize a lot of work and forget about that part. So I think going through and making sure those licenses are there is probably a critical step at this point. But yeah, that code is all open. All right. So the intention today is to have a participatory session. And in order to get there, I'd like to give a little bit of background on how the course is structured and where it's going next. Hopefully in a way that opens people up to thinking about the project that I'm going to ask everybody to think about today. So a short presentation here. Let me share screen. I could just do the whole one. And then let's go like this. All right. So in 15 minutes or less, Plutus PBL. This current iteration of the course opened on July 18th and was designed to be both time-based and asynchronous. We wanted to have cohorts. It's really nice when people have a group of fellow learners to travel along with and to be learning at the same time. And so having a cohort like this one, which we call PPBL Summer 2022, is helpful for anybody in that position. And in the future, our intention is to keep having time-based cohorts that give people that opportunity to collaborate, meet each other. But the content itself is designed to be asynchronous. So in Canvas, we have a series of modules that people can work through in order. We've played around a bit with prerequisites, making it so that you have to do this one before you can do that one. But there's no rules with how we do that. Not yet. And you can see by the numbers right here, a little more than 200 people have signed up, and maybe 1 in 8 of those people or so are engaged enough to be completing assignments. This is what it looks like if you haven't been inside a Canvas before. There's a set of modules, and each of these expands to show a series of content inside of the module. And just stop me anytime with questions, just interrupt or use that hand raise icon if any of this raises any questions for you. The course is structured in this way, and I just want to go into these first 2 points before today we start talking about the credential prototypes that we're working on in the course. The course centers around 3 projects, which were named for learners when they first logged into Canvas on the first day of the course. And we've kept these as a place that we're moving towards, and we're just starting to get there now that we're in week 9 out of 10. Our intention at the beginning was to really be getting into this project phase more around week 5 or 6. But testnet broke and we're navigating the Vassal hard fork, and there's been a couple other things going on that just slowed the course down a little bit. And I'm eager to get feedback from everybody who took the course over the 10-week period to think about, how we can naturally improve it next time when there's not a massive hard fork coming up, and maybe we can trust testnet a little bit better. But we're moving into this phase of working on 3 projects. We're applying the Gimbalabs PBL framework, which I want to give you a little background on. And like I said, prototyping some form of a credential token. These are the 3 projects that were introduced: the Gimbal Bounty, Treasury, and Escrow. Maybe you heard about this in the spring. If not, this is something that we can do a deep dive into very soon. token dashboards, and the course completion token I just mentioned. And we'll necessarily talk about these three things today and how they fit together. That's what I'm hoping to set up right now. So this is the Gimbalabs PBL framework. We recognize that in somebody's journey into contributing, they first have to be onboarded into understanding what they might want to contribute to in the first place. There's some necessary background knowledge they have to build. We call that a BBK, or a building background knowledge. Once people are onboarded and they've built up some background knowledge, they can start to specialize. And once people have the specialized knowledge and skills to contribute, they should be invited to do so. These terms were also introduced from the very start of this course. This is from the homepage in Canvas, where learners could see the syllabus outline. And you could see right here, what was written in just plain text at the beginning has gradually switched to being links over the course of the last 9 weeks. But this terminology is at the core of the course, and this is how it's organized. Onboarding modules are numbered with 100 level, BBK modules 200, specializing are 300 level, and then contributions are at the 400 level. And so this is a picture of what the course looks like. If we look at it vertically, the expectation is that learners move through all of the onboarding modules and then all of the BBK modules, and then they can choose their pathway through the 300 level specializing modules and then apply what they've learned to contributing to these 3 projects. Just to, in case that's not legible, I don't expect that vertical view to be easy to read. Here's just a map view so you can read a little bit more about what each of those modules are. Any questions so far? Scott.
I just want to bring up that I have a question about the token, but I'm not going to raise it right now because I don't want to interrupt this. But at closing, please.
Cool. And the token matters when we start looking at this at a higher level. What else? Okay.
I do have a question about the dashboards. The dashboards are providing info about PBL course participants, what they do with their tokens, or all of those types of things.
So the initial case here is thinking about what we were talking about in tokenomics meetings over the last few weeks, right? Gimbals are moving out there. But most of that movement is within these working groups. The PBL working group, Swarm kind of created a working group, right? And there were a few others where the tokens actually moved. And based on that, we can talk about what we would want to report so that it's easier for people to make decisions about where they engage and where they might start to contribute or where they ask for help. But the idea is we want to have a lot of components that people can, pick and choose to get whatever sort of reporting or dashboard functionality they need. So in the course right here, you see module 202 getting started with the front end. And then this 301 mini project ties a couple different things together, both a Plutus contract and the use of a front end and a little bit of querying the blockchain. But the idea here is we're really also trying to get students to build components, get familiar with React components, because if you combine a Plutus contract with a component that can be reused across projects, you've empowered a lot of people to pick those things up and start to use them in their own ways. All right, so that's the map of this particular course. And something to keep in mind for a moment from now, all of these 300 level modules have 4 leveled mastery assignments, and they look like this, right? So in module 301, you can see there's these 4 mastery levels. These are the steps that people are asked to go through as they work on the faucet project. Here's 4 kind of discrete components that all have to do with querying the blockchain. We were working on this one, 302.2, earlier today. Levels 3 and 4, by the way, I mean, level 4 is the most challenging, right? Level 1 is relatively approachable. Level 4 ought to be a challenge. And so levels 3 and 4 here are pushing people to start thinking in terms of creating components that other people can pick up and iterate on. And all of those will be open and part of the PPBL front end template, which is a React project that other people can fork or clone and use that to initialize their own Web3 front end. So in general, this is the picture. Right, here's kind of the fingerprint of Plutus PBL summer 2022, from onboarding to BBK to specialize to contribute. But there's no rules about how many onboarding modules or BBK modules they'll need to be. Maybe it's this simple. And you might have a small discrete project that you want to get people to contribute to, and you only need 1 onboarding module, 1 BBK module, and a little bit of specialization, right? So these things can all look different. The idea here is, how do we get people to go from here, hey, I'm new and I want to contribute, to being able to contribute to something? And I want you to think about this in the context of Catalyst. Catalyst Fund 9 results are going to come out soon and the funding will follow. And suppose somebody has a Catalyst project that they need some extra team members to contribute to. Well, we can support them to build out how you onboard, what BBK you need, get people ready to contribute, and then do so. And this can happen a bunch, right? And if we start chaining these things together, we end up with the org chart for a DAO, where these blue squares represent somebody brand new. Okay, that's at the top of the hierarchy here. All of this thinking is in service of the newest newcomer who's curious and wondering if they can learn something useful and contribute to something that matters to them. And so all of these pathways, this can happen recursively, right? We can invite people into an organization with some quick onboarding and background knowledge and say, hey, here's a few different avenues you might want to explore. And you might do the onboarding module for several of these and choose which one to keep going with. And you might do the BBK for a handful of them. And finally, you start to have some clarity about what you want to do. We've all had that experience of not being sure what to focus on. It's really nice to have a chance to survey all the different opportunities, but gradually move towards the place where you do have uniquely specialized knowledge and you're ready to contribute. And it's likely enough that this would repeat, right? Contributions might build a project large enough that it would spawn its own new pathways. And so this process can repeat upon itself. And now you've got this whole web. Now, how long is it going to be until Gimbalabs has this many projects going on? This might be 10 years away. That's okay, right? But this is how these puzzle pieces fit together. And the projects that we're working on in this course facilitate all of this. We need dashboards to give some people some basic information to maybe help with their decision-making process. Newcomers who want to go where the action is, experts who are trying to figure out, hey, what's the most impactful thing I could work on right now? And there's a way that reporting on the prior movement of tokens, both gimbals that might represent just a general exchange of value, or contribution tokens, we can track how both of those are moving to help out with decision making. We can then use multiple instances of the GBTE in different contribution nodes to organize, reward, and track work. This is a critical thing about how the GBTE is being built. We're trying to build a tool and the documentation so that anybody can grab it and create their own instance of it with their own tokens if they want to. And then different people can be the owners of different treasuries. So each of these contribution boxes, this greenish teal color, okay, there might be a GBT for a whole bunch of them. And there would be a different owner, or when we get multi-sig going, that's a sharp DAO question, but obviously a necessary thing for us to build. How do we organize the work that's happening within each of these? And what's happening right here in one contribution node doesn't have to have anything to do with what's happening over here. These instances would work independently. Now, for anybody who's taking the course right now, you've seen the faucet project where you finished your faucet, you shared the contract, and then you registered your faucet with metadata. The same pattern can hold for collections of GBTEs. And think about headless dApps. We can have one of these instantiated with a contract, and then we can have collections of those on different web-based front ends. Gimbalabs might host one page where you can see 12 different instances of a bounty treasury and escrow. And then another person might build another website for their organization, and they might want to post some of the same contract instances. We'll be able to. This is really enabling both the reuse and instantiation of the project, but also that headless dApp component where different people can all link to the same thing from different places. And to do that, it's going to be necessary to have some kind of credential. Okay, so in order for somebody to make a contribution, the way this dApp is built, they need to have a contributor token. So maybe there's some overlap between this idea of a course completion token and a GBTE style contribution token. This is one of the things we want to look at together today. But overall, these tokens provide two things. B is this access, right? Access to committing to work in a contribution node. Think about it. If we have some rules, for example, you got to do the BBK if you're going to contribute, or you at least have to specialize in one thing if you're going to contribute. And only after you do so are you then able to commit to bounties in one of these contribution nodes. That's what's possible. But in a more subtle way, we can also communicate across this chart by looking at the movement of contribution or course completion tokens and the movement of gimbals. This contribution node right here might need help that this one over here is able to offer. That's a lateral movement. Gimbals could be used to exchange that value, or at the very least, contribution tokens can be used for people to say, hey, I know we don't know each other, but here's what I've contributed to in the past. You can look at my contributions on this dashboard, and I would like to contribute to your project now. So I hope you can see, A, how the current course is just a prototype for what we do hope to scale. I think a deeper Plutus course is coming soon, a Dandelion PBL course, a tokenomics PBL course, and I hope that some people in this room might have some ideas about what else you want to onboard and build up knowledge for so that people can start contributing to things that matter to you. So this is our task today. We want to build these completion tokens. This is a project of the current PPBL course, But I know there's a lot of people in this meeting right now who have thought a lot about, hey, what data do we need, right? And maybe it's metadata, but maybe it's more than metadata. There's other questions too. And so for the rest of this session, I'm hoping that we can talk through some of these questions, whatever feels most inspiring to you, and then maybe think about this metadata here, and then think beyond metadata. Quinn's project posting some really interesting personal identifiers that a lot of us were looking at the end of last week is a really exciting thing to think about, but there's other ways to think about it too. So, questions for our discussion. We want to give away these completion tokens when people finish the course. What should they include? What should they do? Must we set a deadline for a certain cohort of completion tokens? Or since the class runs asynchronously, can they be given out anytime? Do we want to set some minimum requirement? Do we distinguish between the work people have done if they're choosing to work on different 300 level modules, and do 400 level contributions matter? There's probably other questions too. And I'm really excited for us to be combining kind of the way we talk about things here at Playground and this active work of building this PBL project right now. So Scott.
Yeah, so the token that you distributed, was that the contributor token that was, I think we had to use NAMI wallet, I believe. And I'm wondering, yeah, what its function is, because I actually used it to get into Canvas, and then I haven't done anything because I've been swamped with a whole bunch of other stuff. And then my other question is there a way to distribute a token to a stake address to where it will deposit to any wallet, and you don't have to choose a wallet? Thank you.
Awesome. Okay. Great question. So taking those one at a time. Yeah, there was a prototype of the GBTE in the spring that was on like a busted, cobbled together JavaScript library that just barely worked. And with the early implementation of this, and some of those instances are still live, and we minted access tokens for those systems. We could continue to use those, right? Those are just mainnet tokens with policy IDs. When you write a Plutus contract, or when you write any Plutus contract, you can reference any token you want, whether you have something to do with it or not, right? Like I could write a contract that gives people some token I mint if they own a space bud. And I've never had a space bud. I obviously didn't mint them, but I can still write a contract where they are relevant. Okay, so we can use any token that's ever been minted in contracts, and future GBT instances might use those prior contribution tokens, absolutely. But they don't have to. They could use any policy ID that the instantiator wants to at the time of building that. And so the question is now, those tokens that unlock the ability to contribute to a project that's being tracked here, are they the same thing as a course completion token? I could argue both ways for that right now, and I'm very curious if people think those should be one and the same, or if they should be unique. And then Scott, your second question. Can you remind me the second one?
Yeah, that was, can you distribute a token to a stake address versus having to identify a particular wallet?
Yeah, and that is the reason why I don't have a working new instance of this to show you today, because we're refactoring the contract so that it's not using a single pub key hash like NAMI exposes, or like it is exposed if you're working on Cardano CLI with just a single address wallet. But we must use staking credentials. Well, they're not the only option, but they are the best one if we want to allow somebody who's using like Eternal that has how many different addresses on it to be able to interact with a dApp like this from the front end.
Cool. Thank you. I appreciate it. The reason I asked that question was more or less for like voting. So if you can
Yeah.
distribute a voting token to a stake ID, then it's one for stake ID versus 50 wallets or whatever.
Oh man,
Just-
dude. Yeah, well, so there's only 3 projects on the screen right here, right? Because these in my estimation, these are the primitive projects that are then going to enable the next round of projects. Like you're saying, voting token distribution is such a wonderful next step to go to once we have, you know, some prototypes of completion contributor or credential tokens. And I have some other ideas too that I just can't wait to get to. Like doing these 3 things is just a prerequisite for doing the next thing, which ain't that how it always is?
Hey, can I ask one more question real quick? I apologize.
Yep.
How much Haskell knowledge is required to do the PPBL or to do this session? Yeah, thanks.
So this is another thing, and Lucas has been instrumental in helping with this. I mean, honestly, one of the hardest things people do in the course is they onboard. It's crazy because all the way back here, setting up your Plutus development environment is just hard. It's just hard. There's so many things that can go wrong on every different operating system. People have to like understand some basics about NICs, which, you know, on top of Haskell, you just have to do somersaults in your brain just to get your head around that. But we want to get really good at helping people through that. I think we did okay in this iteration, but we're not there yet. We need to get better. What's interesting is once you get through that part, compiling some basic contracts is pretty easy comparatively. And a lot of these modules here, they don't even touch Plutus directly. Okay, so, you know, you can do modules 201 and 202. You could do all of 202, most of 201 and 203. You could do module 302 without even touching Plutus. And this speaks to the other goal of this course. We don't need every developer. We don't need every Cardano developer to be a Plutus developer, but we do need a critical mass of people to understand what Plutus actually is. And that's what this course is designed to provide, right? Where, you know, it's not about doing everything that's possible with Plutus. It's understanding as a model where Plutus fits into the development stack, so that if you want to just be a front-end specialist or even a project manager, you understand kind of schematically how Plutus fits in and what role it plays. I'm consulting with a couple of different projects right now, and that's what I'm trying to show people is you don't need to learn Haskell Plutus. You need to learn how the business logic of Plutus works. And that's a different skill than being able to write a Plutus Haskell function. It's kind of a systems design skill. And that's another one where we really need people. So to answer your question, you don't need any coming in. The idea is we want to take people from zero and give them a mental model for what Plutus actually is. And then the course is designed to give people, you know, avenues to take whatever path they want after they get through kind of that onboarding in BBK. Yeah, the M1s, damn it. I don't know what we're going to do about those. Did you actually get it, Nori, to work? And then Nori's other question, can these tokens be traded, sold, and bought to gain access without putting in the effort? Okay, this is the interesting one. 100%, absolutely. Well, once a token is on a live Cardano network, it's hard, if not impossible, to stop people from sending it wherever they want. So what do we do about that, right? And to me, there's some really interesting implications of that point.
But you don't want to talk about that.
I'm wondering if anybody else has thoughts. I obviously I could keep talking, but.
It is, Bob's his biggest voting now.
So let's think about that one for just a second, okay? Yeah. Let's take it from just the GBTE perspective for just a moment, okay? This is the way this DApp works is it's two contracts. One contract is a treasury that holds a bucket of tokens. The other is a contract that holds in escrow instances of each commitment that somebody makes. And when a contributor makes a commitment, here's what happens. The specified number of funds are pulled out of the treasury and into a new transaction that's going to create a UTXO at the escrow address. But it's not just the tokens from the treasury that go into that UTXO. The contributor's access token also gets placed there. So even if somebody sold their contributor token to somebody who wants to free ride or whatever, the most they could do with it is commit to a single bounty and then slow down our system. Okay, they can only use it once. The bounty has to be completed and then distributed by, for now, the owner of the treasury, but this ought to be multi-sig, and that's a clear next step. If the work of that bounty is never done, that UTXO that's in escrow will never be distributed, and therefore that's as far as somebody can take it there. To the course completion question, yeah, let's say that somebody finishes the course and they get a completion token. They can sell it to somebody else. To me, that just understanding that's a fact, that is easy for that to happen, and we have to assume it will. So when we make claims about what that token is good for, I think we have to acknowledge that. I wouldn't want a course completion token just to mean that, somebody gets paid 100 ADA per week in perpetuity for doing nothing, right? That would clearly be a bad idea. But if it's used as a token that gives you access to contribute somewhere and you just continue to do so, that feels more fair. But I'm just trying to get you thinking. What else? What other thoughts does that get people thinking about?
So I was just thinking, I was about to type this, but I figured I'd speak it out instead. So this contributor token, couldn't in the future, could it be, well, I don't know if it'd be for the contributor token, but couldn't the contract say the token needs to be accompanied with X number of ADA as like a fee, not a transaction fee, but like a gimbal fee or something of that nature. But then the contract also scans the stake ID for other wallets that holds X number of gimbals. And then if they reach a certain threshold of gimbal ownership, then that fee is nixed and they carry on.
That's absolutely logic, right, that we could use. So yeah, I would love to hear other people's thoughts on there being some deposit to being a contributor in some case. And then also, right, does holdership of gimbals provide any benefit in one direction or another moving forward? Right, when you think in this chart, these contribution nodes, they don't have to have GBTEs, but it's a tool that's available if it's helpful to people who are working on a project. And whenever there is one running, that information and those contribution tokens can be made interoperable across contribution nodes. And so that's what I mean by this idea of kind of lateral communication. Contributor tokens can provide that. Imagine if somebody who has a contribution token contributes over here and over here and over here, and they're never full-time on any of these projects, but they're carving out the job they want to have by adding their specialized expertise in these different places. And then it's easy for them to play, like they could place a component on their own, their own personal website that says, look, here's a record of my contribution. You want to hire me? Here's my rate. This is my rate because look at this kick-ass portfolio I've created. And Gimbalabs has jurisdiction over none of that, right? It's out there, and it's all data that people can just grab from the chain to then push forward with whatever pathway they're trying to create.
So I've got some thoughts about the contributor token in the sense that, like it does pay to think about intangibles when it comes to these tokenomics. Like the actual defense of the Cardano protocol is the intangible of Cardano holders tapping a stake pool operator and saying, this guy, and gets rewarded for that thing. It doesn't cost them anything other than an initial transaction fee, and they can still do whatever they want with their tokens. So if we've got a contributor token, what are the reasons why a contributor would let go of that token? Or why, inversely, why would somebody want a contributor token? And I can only think of two reasons, and that one would be collectible value, get one of the initial first year Gimbalabs PBL contributor tokens, right? It's going to mean something in 50 years. The other reason would be to contribute, and that's not a bad thing. I suppose somebody might want one to steal something that's already open source, but that seems obtuse to me. So I'm curious what y'all think about that.
A, I see A.
Yo, can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, you sound great.
Okay, cool. Good question, Steve.
I got a lot of them.
Don't we know it? Yeah, well, part of my take on this is I think that it kind of goes back to our previous conversation, I think last week or maybe a while back, is the distinction between fungibility or fungible and non-fungible, for lack of a better word, and the comparison I alluded to with airplane, like miles, etc., right, versus like fiat, which super interchangeable. In this case, I think perhaps tapping into something like token bundles would be interesting, because as I see it, value is created or sort of communicated through context, right? So as part of either metadata or part of a number of tokens which are bundled, during a specific transaction, that could then infer more context right? So Gimbal could basically, be representative of, okay, hey, this represents contribution from an open source perspective, like deep decentralization, that kind of thinking. And then additional context is added by, additional tokens, which are in there. And part of that could be like an individual's tokens, right? I mean, this might sort of, be sort of wading into more bloat territory, but yeah, from an experiment standpoint, that could be interesting. And I feel like approaching it this way kind of comes back to the point which Steve pointed to, which I'm not sure whether I'd spoken about previously, which is basically you don't want to have the problem that Bitcoin has, right? Which is if you know it's going to be more valuable tomorrow, you're not going to spend it today, right? There's the whole deflationary paradox, right, or quagmire. So yeah, and maybe this alludes to the sort of demirage aspect spoken about before. But yeah, the number of things which I feel like it's a tricky thing, and I just want to sort of throw some of those ideas in there to consider as, I suppose, some technical maybe ways to go about thinking about things with like the token bundles and sort of creation of context and metadata. And then thinking about the incentive, the incentive or disincentives that are created from a social standpoint by deliberately or sort of non-deliberately, for lack of a better word, the byproducts which aren't intended.
Always assume there will be unassumed consequences. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. But yeah, I suppose it kind of goes back to the whole like the known unknowns and the unknown unknowns.
Right.
I mean, you can get into this weird vicious cycle where you just end up like not doing anything because just the enormity of the possibility, the possibility space of something that you're trying to mitigate for.
That's right.
And you want to obviously be cognizant of that and not let that cripple your actions. But at the same time, yeah, just designing from the higher perspective architecture, which keeps in mind the potential for that, and kind of leans or has an opinion somewhat to kind of create the incentives that lean towards a particular side, like creating more decentralization than centralization and that kind of thing.
This idea, yeah, how long is the list of reasons not like just to stop trying? Like there's so many great reasons to stop. But and this speaks to Alex's point. Contribution access is access management. Maybe we should look in the direction of Prism and Hyperledger. And I agree completely. Right. I just personally don't want to wait for Prism. And that's the other goal here, is to just force us all to confront these issues. I'm tired of the easy way out that, oh, Prism's not available yet. There's not yet an SSID standard. That was Google's argument against, the Web3 consortium or the W3C consortium, starting to publish DID standards, right? But really the goal here is to force the issue and put in more people's hands the problems that necessitate SSID in the first place. And so that's exactly what we need. So Alex, we're going to push these things out. And the first people to finish the course are going to have these credential tokens. And right, there's going to be no way of the wider world proving, that Yuli's contributor token is in Yuli's wallet, right? And the more people who understand that, the closer we get, the more energy we build towards having SSID at scale. And if Prism comes out and is useful, great. That would make a lot of our lives a lot easier. But if it's delayed for another 2 years, then we're going to build something else along the way. And what an exciting opportunity. So really think about, is there an issue that you want to force? We have the opportunity to do that. Going back to an earlier point, can you give an example of a token bundle in kind of the context here, and just a basic idea of what that might facilitate?
I can try. Well, let's see. I mean, a not so good example, I think, would be alluding to a particular context. So, like, for instance, if you have, say, a token from different entities, whether it's, in this case, say, like different stake pools, sort of collaborating, say, on a particular contract or something, you could then, have, infer in a way, okay, so like this particular action defined in this contract was built upon by XYZ entities, and within those entities you've got these specific wallet addresses that that basically contributed. So from that particular context, you can then sort of in a way gather the weight of a particular contribution here, say, by the volume of how much that specific action or contract or script is being used, which then is able to infer some value from the contributor standpoint. I mean, that's just kind of like an early nebulous thought, but I think just using the native environment, and of course this is highly at the moment limited to contribution within the context of code, right? Which is something which I'm personally trying to move away from, and try and figure out a way to solve for being able to figure out the weighting and the nuance and the variability of problem solving in areas which are really, really like fringe, right? Because you solve for that, you actually then solve for creation of utility within the ecosystem, new products and services, but also including things like internationalization, etc. But yeah, so low-hanging fruit is being able to just tap into the tech specific things like Git commits, and or even more specifically in the context of entities who have an identity like stake pools and the stake pool IDs, and then obviously script addresses, etc.
That gets me thinking in a few different ways. But one thing I'm really proud about in our Canvas course is that a lot of the assignments, as evidence, students have to submit a real transaction hash for something they did, right? Hey, if you understood this assignment, you should be able to build a transaction that A, B, and C. And if you accomplish that, you share the transaction hash. There's nothing else to do. That's it. But what you got me thinking about with token bundles, and this is a question I could really go either way on, right? When we talk about a credential token, or for this course in particular, let's just focus on this course right here. Is there one token where there's metadata that says which of these mastery level assignments you completed by which date? Or do you get a bundle of tokens? Do you get one token for each of these mastery level assignments, and different of them open up different access to different contribution opportunities? Because, hey, if, I might only need somebody to just do a little bit of styling for me, so I'm only going to ask for this level if they want to contribute. But somebody else might need an end-to-end transaction component, which is definitely a bigger ask. So we could just disaggregate those and have a variety of different tokens along the way. I have no idea which one of those is best, and so I'd love to hear people thinking about that. Not to mention Cogno, right? Like maybe Quinn's Cogno tool makes all of, am I saying that right? Cogno man. Maybe what he built makes all of this irrelevant because we could all just store it in somebody's on-chain datum. Hey, what do you think?
Yeah, that is possibly that is one of the possible outcomes. And if that is an outcome, the one thing, the reason why I raised my hand was I just kind of quickly went back to a point which I've been thinking about, and Lockhart also kind of brought it up in passing, which is it's been kind of exemplified in the context of Ethereum, and it's got its name in that context, the vampire attack, right? Which is, someone coming along, building, say, a marketplace and having, specific contracts that, help operate that marketplace. And within that marketplace, they're offering services which they're taking say a fee of, I don't know, 2%. Someone else comes along, creates a new brand, because all the, because the scripts are open source and available. They then basically just clone the repo and just undercut them, basically. This is an issue which, as I look around within, the Cardano ecosystem, I don't see people actually like appreciating how significant of an issue this is. I don't really see many folks working towards addressing it. And I think the way to solve it, personally, in my opinion, is to figure out at scale a way that something like a wallet can be able to gain, such big and broad adoption, which then enforces or implements a specific kind of mode of operation, in a way sort of like enforcing a social contract, where if a particular entity or context or script isn't actually a reflection of true innovation, right? Like a step change kind of thing, then the fees that apply to that particular transaction, can actually, be sort of like a carrot and a stick, right? To really kind of get folks to think of, to mitigate and to disincentivize, the vampire attack. So that's I think one way of going about it. And then just a quick other sort of separate point here, maybe a slightly clearer answer to your earlier questions with regard to token bundles. Identity is simply, at least as I think of it, identity is simply, a chain of events, right? Which over time, become super unique to a particular actor. But then in thinking about that, and especially in the context of a public domain, you have to then be cognizant of privacy, right? So yeah, then kind of becomes a balance between, as I see it, kind of simply put, getting tokens and having them available within a non-enterprise address or an enterprise address, right? So like thinking in a binary way, if you accept it into an enterprise, then you're afforded a level of anonymity, because through a staking address you can't be able to figure out what tokens said person is holding. Then you can then be able to through smart contracts be able to actually verify that in a way, like retain, be able to prove that you hold said token, but it's not publicly known, right, within said enterprise address. Yeah, without sort of what's the word, without compromising this whole like public identity, because in a way the blockchain is a bit like as it's been mentioned before, it's a bit like having your web browser history all made public. That's all your search queries. It's not really a good idea. Right, so you need incognito mode, or well, I mean, even that's not really private. You need like a Tor equivalent, Tor tunneling and that kind of thing. But anyway, I've spoken for far too long, but I hope that's kind of given some of some context into how I'm thinking about yeah, tapping into different things like token bundles, I suppose, in the context of the thing that I just mentioned, in enterprise, non-enterprise, using them as was like from a datum standpoint, to as we've spoken about before, as a sort of gating type experience, but then also considering some privacy stuff. I feel like John's going to say something. Okay.
No, I just really enjoy listening to you all talk. It's making me all nostalgic. It's like back in book club, February 21.
Oh man. Oh yeah.
Sophia, thank
I
you for
remember.
stopping by, and hey, be in touch. I know that we haven't really talked yet. Cheers. I know A was even talking about, doing some after town hall PBL work, which I love that idea.
Yeah, and actually, as a kind of post thing, I was recently watching. I think they only just posted it. The Drips guys. The last one that they did, I think, was on governance, and then this Umbrella folks. Just sort of like an update that they did. Yeah, really tapping into that for community. I think is definitely something worthwhile looking into.
I've had a crazy month since you've been doing those breakout rooms, but I've heard some really great feedback about how much they enjoyed them. So I definitely think you should keep doing it.
I want to say like the doing the PBL like in after town hall, I think that'd be a great idea for onboarding new people into the program. So maybe it's like I honestly haven't been to town hall in like a month, so I don't know if that's something that y'all been doing, but to actually have a breakout room for PBL or PPBL and allow people to, you don't have to go deep into doing live coding sessions. You can have like some simple code that's up and just make it kind of like an introductory to maybe onboard some more people that could be interested.
Yeah. I think I think we're at like a critical moment of people understanding what a Plutus contract actually is. And I think we could do an after town hall segment with that question for 3 months straight, and just to make sure that just to raise the level of people's ability to reason about what these tools can and can't do. That'd be really fun.
You know what I'd like to see, because I think people don't understand it, and I think in particular people that might be migrating from Ethereum don't understand, is the, and you guys tell me if I'm wrong to say this, it doesn't seem to me like smart contracts on Cardano are gameable in the way that they are on these other EVM blockchains. And I think understanding that at a deep level is really worth communicating.
It is shocking how different the protocols are. We are only at the beginning of people understanding the implications of fully interoperable tokens. The entire world of DeFi, the entire, like 95% of the global expertise about what tokenomics is, was invented and formulated within the particular constraints of Ethereum. And that limits what's possible. People really haven't yet had this chance to think about what it means to have a headless dApp out in the wild, and what it means to have, interoperable without asking for permission tokens that don't have to pass through the contracts that they were minted within. It's a crazy change. And in the long run, Ethereum is the outlier, right? Cardano is building upon what Bitcoin started and adding an outrageous amount of functionality to it. And the fundamental rules are completely different. This is not, it's not a maximalist argument. It's that, holy cow, all of that work, all of that intellectual labor that went into building up the way things are done on Ethereum was done with, different DNA than what we now get to work with. So yeah, if we could show that at After Town Hall and really get people, there's so much to leave behind, and we've done a lot of that. I think we've both iterations of PPBL have provided the opportunity for people to think through what they know if they're coming from Ethereum and what it is now. I don't know if we have the recordings of like the first conversations that the handful of us had with Mix when he first showed up, because his whole understanding of blockchain development was in that Ethereum mindset. And to watch him go from, wait a minute, what's going on, and into just, I mean, at this point, he's teaching the advanced Plutus lectures for PPBL, because it so resonated with him what the difference was. But yeah, that's what a cool journey, and we get to guide a lot of people along that.
Yeah, it was really fun to see with him, and he was fast at it. I mean, he picked up on it so fast. It was interesting.
He asked the best questions. He had some killer questions, that were so good to dive into. Juan, what you got?
Hey, James, thank you. Oops, just change this.
Don't change change that.
Nah, this one. Anyway, so yes, I think the origin of why we are here is basically based on Ethereum and Bitcoin, and that's the reason for tokenomics. And we have to start thinking of ways to to kind of learn a little more, take some time and learn a little more about that, instead of just doing just trying to build based on spaces that are already covered. So, build up on top of that, I think is key, is important. I value the pioneer work that Gimbalabs has been doing, not waiting for anybody, just working and developing. It's awesome. I think it's great. And I just think that actually the initial idea for us to be here is financial freedom, and the bank don't bank was an idea that came up out of Bitcoin. So yeah, going back to the breakout rooms, I think a great breakout room will be talk about the before and after hard fork, and that's coming. I think that's the right timing, and it will bring a lot of attention because the source of the information and the research is Gimbalabs, especially onboarding, because Gimbalabs is being able to connect the human to the code as far as the learning part. And that is crucial. That is very important. And you know what I'm saying, that for me it's been a little bit challenging because of my disposition, availability of time to work on things. But yeah, the human part is something key that no other program, and I'm saying that by experience, can provide as Gimbalabs does. So it would be great to have a breakout room talking about those things. And there is not need per se of that much of publicity or marketing if people understand why Gimbalabs is doing what it's doing. So just to frame, what question are we in? Are we talking about still on the tokenomics or course completion, or the next one is
We're given the topic a full playground treatment by starting from one question and seeing where it takes us.
okay.
But yeah, thank you.
So we are in the first question still.
Well, hey, listen, we've got a set of questions, and we'll get to these. There's no hurry.
Gotcha. So we can address any questions in any order. Perfect.
Just want to say hey to Justin, who just showed up. Justin, I was talking to Alex Sarragan about self-service token minting, and he would be curious to kind of look at that and play out some scenarios with you. But we can talk about that also later this week. We got a regular live coding coming up on Thursday. Hey, what you got?
Wow, a whole bunch of sneezes is what I've got. Okay, yeah, just a quick thought. In the chat here, Nori contributed an interesting thought, which is with the idea of after town hall breakout rooms, we could possibly not just stop there, but also consider having a presence in different town halls, right? There's all for the international community, different time zones and stuff. But it occurred to me that with that, we'll in a way need to have the right tooling in order to actually be receptive to that, right? So I know, for instance, with the African or was it EMEA time zone, African, so like Middle East time zone, there's a translation that happens, I think, from like Swahili to Arabic to I forget what other language.
French.
Yeah, but basically
French.
French. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, French. And it's quite interesting, to experience it. So I was just wondering. Obviously, it's still early days, but and Roberto and I and Adriano and a few other folks within the Spanish community have, been talking about where the needs for the Spanish community, well, just the sort of, I suppose, Latin American community as well. I'm curious whether there are any thoughts in terms of getting folks to either translate or to actually like teach PBL or any sort of like, I'm curious about thoughts that have to do with the international community. Excuse me.
Yeah, Sebastian Paban has taken a lot of that on. Juan, you've talked to him about that a bit, right?
Yes, we are exploring ways to translate all this material. We are actually now working on that. And actually, he has a proposal for translation. Hopefully, it will be it'll be funded.
Awesome, thank you.
Do you know, hey, do you know Alex Pitshanker?
No.
Yes, wait. Oh, yeah.
He's really been quick and effective at getting translations in Spanish and Portuguese for the Mercy subcircle, the stuff that they've created. And it's been impressive to me, how quick and easy they've done that. And, I think by comparison, the PPBL documentation should be pretty quick and easy to do also.
Well, I want to make a comment on that, Steve. Alex is the LATAM community. LATAM community decided to put together a translation team that is doing a lot of work. And yeah, but it's something related to, not to Alex, but the LATAM community. Now there is a conversation in reference to that precisely.
I'm sorry.
No.
I didn't. I knew he was doing it with LATAM, but I didn't. He's my contact with it, so.
Got you.
Awesome. Thank you for that info.
Anything I can do to just let me know.
I really appreciate that. I'm definitely gonna take you up on that offer. It's not one of those situations where you throw out an offer and no one, the person doesn't really follow it up. I'm definitely gonna follow up on that.
Got it.
Hey, Curtis. Yeah, we're in playground, and as usual, we have a PBL check-in starting at the bottom of the hour in a few minutes. But so really, like, this is where we're going, right? There's gonna be some tokens that represent people having worked through this course. They're likely to be imperfect, and we get to decide. Okay, so this is something that people working through the class are gonna have a chance to make some final decisions on, but anybody who's not participating in the class, just want to bring these questions to you. If there's an experiment that you would like to see, a line of metadata that you think would be interesting, or other tools, right? Thinking about multiple tokens, or thinking about inline datum, like with the Cogno contract or something else. These are the opportunities. And the reason is we want to build up this structure, right? We want to build this. And then we want to build the offshoots of this that aren't even connected to it, because it doesn't have to all come from one place. But just remember, the top of this chart is not the peak of some hierarchy, right? The people who have been in this DAO org chart the longest are the ones in these green nodes. The top of this chart is the person who is the newest to these tools, because they're going to have the best ideas. And that's who we work for. Okay. Those people who are curious. Hey, I heard blockchain is going to change the world, but I don't believe that, but I'm open to trying to find out why, or whatever their entry point is. We meet them there. We onboard them. We build their background knowledge, and we help them find a way to contribute. And maybe they contribute to something going on within Gimbalabs or another organization. You know, how many different hats do all of us here wear? But once that starts to happen, you know, we create the tools to make it easier to continue to facilitate this. And if we create these tools right, I do hope they are easy to translate. You know, that's a good metric for good documentation, right? If it's clear enough, it should be less of a hassle to translate it. Hopefully we can do that. And then we can think about interoperability across time zones, right? How does GBTE or some kind of credential token allow people to collaborate even when they're not awake at the same time? And there's big organizations that have their own way of doing this, right? These global organizations do exist, but this is a collection of smaller autonomous units working together. And that's what we have the chance to build here. So keep feedback coming. I'm really excited for, you know, the next 2 weeks of PPBL as we officially close out this cohort. But really, that's right where the fun starts. You know, it's wild that we didn't know the date for the Vassal hard fork when we launched the course, but it's kind of wild that it happens the same week as the final week of the course, and then we can really start this contribution phase and see where it goes next. Steve, what do you think? Yeah, we still gotta wait. Lucas, I couldn't play with transactions on pre-prod yesterday though, because the cost parameters, we still gotta wait a couple of days for those. 2 more days. So that's when the fun's really gonna start. And I know that Cremo's probably working 20-hour days right now, building in the Plutus V2 transactions to mesh. Sorry, Steve.
You know, this last time when you put this screen up, I had a hardcore flashback to the 80s and a moment of nausea, because it reminded me all the years and numbers of multi-level marketing companies that my dad got involved in. But you know, I sipped some water and I you know, went into my navel and I thought about it for a moment, and I think those are our next target customers.
Well,
Because that's what they missed, right? That's what they didn't have.
But so it's supposed to do that. And if, you know, this is the animation we eventually need. This is supposed to look like a traditional org chart. It's supposed to make people uncomfortable. We want to put this image in front of people and have them say, what the fuck? Look at that hierarchy there. And then we get to remind people, but hey, in those pyramid schemes, your incentive was to daydream of getting to the top of it. And our message is you enter at the top. And if you put in effort, you can be part of a project that matters to you, and autonomously so, right? Being right here means that you're only beholden to people you're working with. And when you need help, you ask for it. You've got a network. But the only thing that starts that interaction is you deciding to. You're independent right here. And that's completely different. So the animation could start, you know, this dreary, we could even put an 80s filter on it, right? And make people think it's just the same old thing. But then we show the whole thing flipping over and turning into a dandelion. You feel me?
Right.
Can somebody
Yeah,
make
yeah,
that?
yeah. Well, you know, it's not the only metaphor, right? You know,
Right.
like it is network effect in effect.
That's right. Well,
Yeah,
and
that's
this
just-
is then where the gimbals really come into play, right? Because one of the things we haven't really discussed in the tokenomics context yet is that when you're building software, it helps to have a trusted network of people to test your software on, right? To test out those ideas out in the wild. And what if one of the claims we could make about the gimbal is that it gives you access to a network of people who won't just open your app one time, okay? But they'll look at your app and give you the best damn feedback that you could ever find anywhere, right? Think about playground meetings like this as a service. I brought to you guys a design problem today about credential tokens. This is a sellable service for builders, right? And if we were able to say, look, yeah, you're part of this network, you're using our headless dApps, you want to use this token that's built in, that's great. But if you want to change it, here's the one line of code you have to change to make the dApp work for your token instead of ours, right? But if you use our token, here's the further benefits of that. You've got people who talk about this stuff differently. You know, if you've been out there in the crypto universe, you might think one thing, but you're going to get something very different here. You know, we have to formulate that message, and there's hard work ahead to do that. But if that resonates with anybody, that's also, you know, something to help push forward. Testing frameworks, yep.
I do love that how the entire time it is like watching the factory workers work and watching the thing being built. Very easily it can be something that as all of these things are going on, there can be just so many flies on the wall, just like, because that's one thing that is like, when we're on this high level conversation, you know, all the time and everything, we kind of lose sight of the forest through the tree sometimes. But like right now, the calm before the storm that we're excited about right now is you know, being translated to a lot of dismal thoughts and feelings on people that are unaware of like what we're having this discussion and everything. And you know, being able to use this, yes, as education things and all this stuff, but also as just little, you know, peace of mind, little PSA peace of mind of like, hey y'all, some people are working, don't worry, you know, kind of a thing.
People are working, get off your ass and work too. There's work to do, you know, and tweeting is not it, you know, and so we're trying to open it up so people understand there's a role for them. This message that it takes a different kind of brain to write the business logic of Plutus than the actual computer code of Plutus. We have to be really loud about this because we want talented, detail-oriented coders making sure that our contracts do what we want them to do. But figuring out what we want them to do in the first place is absolutely a different skill set. There's no doubt about it. Actually, John, I had the huge privilege of showing Juliana Plutus for the first time. And it was really fun. You got to ask her about that. It really got her going. But she's an example of an audience who's like, who saw Plutus as this black box. But once she understood it as just this sequence of business logic, she was like, oh God, game on, right? And that's because she's got the mind for that kind of thing. And there are thousands of people across the planet who don't want to, or just to be a coder, you just have to be a certain kind of detail oriented. They're not that, but they could help you think creatively about business logic in such a valuable way. So I don't know, these are the messages to get out there. You don't have to just write the code. Catalyst got community effort going, right? But we can replicate that.
I often think about what percentage proportion of the ecosystem now and in the future are actually going to be au fait with Plutus, and how much are needed to be au fait with Plutus. And if you think of that, that's a tiny percentage, and so there's only so many we need to train up and get great at it. And there's a whole other load of work that needs to be done by minds upon minds upon minds, and yeah, they need to start flowing in, and they need to start understanding what's possible rather than how to do it.
Yeah, it's not many, but they need to be everywhere, right? Because it's so fluid, right? We need the people in other cultures that understand their culture's thoughts about transacting, about value, about business.
Yeah, and that's what strikes me as well, is that we need to think about our Plutus developers as a decentralized resource, as much as a network is. If we shouldn't have Plutus developers locked up in projects, they should be free to flow and help build this whole thing. Let's go decentralized throughout, not silo away our developers into the highest paying roles in the private entities who are creaming off the top. Get them in there and out there into all the different projects. That's what I like about all these bounty boards that are, appearing. Yeah, Snap Brillia is doing a great job, and yeah, D-Work and our preview bounty here.
Hey, last words before I turn off the recording.
Yeah, sure. No pressure, right? So let's see. One of the reasons why I am here is because of the philosophy / thinking that actually, from the very beginning, Charles and company implemented, right? Like first principles thinking, and building upon, as someone previously mentioned, I think James, what worked and super awesome, like all the stuff that Bitcoin did, UTXOs, etc. Right, but then now pushing it and making it more efficient as opposed to proof of work, which quite costly, etc. Flipping it to proof of stake and then figuring out proof of stake, just like from a first principles, like figuring out, okay, it's security that we need. Do we need to burn all that energy, or can we actually utilize a different way of having the same result, but just doing it a lot more efficiently and elegantly. So yeah, one of the reasons why I'm within Cardano, and then even within Cardano, one of the reasons why I'm within the Gimbal community is that same thinking, right? The other communities, which I believe, they do not appreciate the difficulty of doing things in a difficult way, not because we're somehow masochistic and like doing things a difficult way, but doing things right from a decentralized standpoint is super important, right? And just kind of tie this back to philosophy and how that ties into architecture and technological and computational resources. Something that I think a lot of people don't really appreciate is the reason why it's expensive to be an infrastructure provider, or to even use things like Bitcoin. It's not that the Bitcoin ledger is that huge. Actually, last time I checked, The ledger, I think, is around 500 gigabytes, which is the same size as Ethereum's, right? Now, mind you, there's like 6 years, give or take. Like Ethereum is 6 years younger than Bitcoin, yet Ethereum's ledger is a lot larger. Now, okay, so ledger aside, you've got computational requirements, proof of work, obviously, hash rate, etc. You're looking at computation and energy, right? In order to then, actually win out the fees and the newly minted Bitcoin. But then computationally within Ethereum, the architecture of it, this global state idea is so computationally expensive, which then has led to the infurers, right? So the infrastructure itself has become centralized, and that has then fed into how people think about things, as as we were talking about earlier. Now, with Cardano, as I said earlier, like, things have been, fundamentally rethought. Last time I checked, the ledger size was around 20 or 30 gigabytes, right? Computationally, it's not as expensive, nowhere close to as expensive as Bitcoin from a proof of work standpoint, or Ethereum, from a global state standpoint, and computationally what that requires. So, I say this, to communicate that as new people come in, I think it's important to kind of just like go think of these things from a first principle standpoint, and appreciate what it means, to make decisions technically, and the debt that then you have to pay further down the line, and what that means for the cost of the monetary cost of the end user, but also the security cost, right, of the end user, as we've seen, within Ethereum, and Solidity, and just all the different decisions which people, have had to, the end users had to pay for. Yeah, I just want to kind of, go back to that particular point, and I suppose bring or underline the fact that decentralization is super important. It has a direct connection to the end user, right? Think about privacy, thinking about changing fundamental nature of value exchange within society, and resource management, right? You can't really in good faith say, oh, this is what we're aiming to do, yet your architectural choices are just really working counter to what it is that you're stating you want to do, right? We've had that politically, where people say one thing and do another, which that's a whole other thing, speaking about integrity and intentions, etc. But yeah, so I continue to be a super super supporter of people who continue to do the hard things because they're important, and yeah, just slog through it. And I really appreciate everyone here and everyone in the community who continues to turn up despite things being difficult, and taking not as not happening as quickly as we would otherwise prefer. Speech over.
See you next week at Gimbalabs Playground.